Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Ricardo Billenzar. Welcome back to Lessons with Ricardo. And today we're continuing the build out of probably the most important part of any home lab or enterprise build out, which is your certificate authority, more specifically, the root certificate authority. So let's go get right into it. All right, y'all. So last time, and excuse the voice, I do still feel under the weather, but I wanted to complete my promise of showing you how to install EJBCA, and that is Community Edition. Now, funny enough, I found out my daytime employer actually uses this as the Enterprise Edition, the Enterprise form of this. So I was pretty proud of myself when I got it installed, and I was like, oh, you know what? Now I know what Enterprise has capability of doing. But all I have to say is that I look forward to showing you how to install this. One thing I wanted to touch on, if you watched the last video, and if you have not, I encourage you to at least take a look at it, where I show you how to set up a root certificate authority, an intermediate certificate authority, as well as producing the very first server certs and client cert. Well, I think I just did server cert. But I showed you how to set up a SAN. All that was in the first video. I wanted to make sure I emphasize the difference is that this video will cover EJBCA. It's a server that allows you to do the same thing as OpenSSL, except it it presents you with a web interface, so a GUI, something you can click on the screen and interact with. So for those who may not enjoy being on the command line interface, this will be for you. Big drawbacks compared to OpenSSL that runs on any box of any size I've ever seen. In fact, the last one I did was one core, one CPU, 512 megabytes of RAM, and I can't remember. There's a hard drive, I think it was like 50 gigabytes, and probably could have gone smaller than that. But it runs smooth. There are really no issues with it, and it's already installed on every Unix distro I know of. And the big difference here is that this is going to require a lot more resources compared to that. So I'm going to be running a 4 CPU, 8 gigabytes of RAM on a LXC container. Now, you don't have to do a container if you don't want to. I prefer that because it's faster on my Proxmox setup. And then space-wise, I did 100 gigs. Probably can get away with 50, but it takes a significant amount more resources compared to doing OpenSSL. One other thing I want to also emphasize is that what I am going through in these videos when I talk about root certificate authorities, I want you to understand this has nothing to do with setting up certificates that will be used on the open World Wide Web, internet, whatever you want to reference it as, because to make your certificates valid and usable for the common everyday person, for the regular website, you want to leverage an actual existing certificate authority that can issue a certificate to your website. Free ones, something like Let's Encrypt. You can also pay for different vendors may have their own payment options, but you want to purchase something that can be validated based on the trust store of every browser that is already out there. And if you do one of these root certificate authorities on your own premise, you won't be a part of that trust store. So that means every browser that you anticipate accessing your web accessible interface would have to have this trusted certificate installed on it. So that obviously really puts you in a bad position if you do this for your primary web accessible website, because the average everyday person would have issues trusting your certificate you create yourself. All right, so all that, let's come back. Let's go and start on installing EJBCA Community Edition. I'm going to show you how quick and easy it is. All right, let me go and adjust the screen here. All right, so we're looking at here my Proxmox. I have my container already up. I'm going to pull it up on the primary screen here. And while I do that, let me show you just a quick rundown of how how simple this really is. You go over to KeyFactor, who is the vendor behind producing this platform. We're going to use the Docker container. I prefer Docker Compose. So the reason why is because for me it's just a lot more streamlined. It's easier to spin up and keep your interface run in the background, and also to updates. I just prefer that. So I'm be running the compose option, which they do specify here as well. They have a little video you can follow. I'm just going to go ahead and install the engine, see if this goes to the website I want. And let's see. Never clicked on these links before. I usually just Google it. Yeah, this is not the one I normally use. Let me show you the one I use from Ubuntu. So Docker. I hope this is the right one, right? Let's see. Nope, I think it's the second one down here. Well, that's DigitalOcean. No, that's not the right one. There we go. Yes, okay. So I know I'm the right one when I see this large blurb of text where it's pulling down and creating an entry in the repository within the operating system. So I'm just going to copy all of this over. I'm running Ubuntu, and I forgot my screen is over here. Let's drop this in. Now, one thing about doing Docker is that when you run Docker in a container in Proxmox, you want to make sure you create an additional user. So one thing I'll show you is how I do that part in just a moment here. I'm just going to copy and paste these entries. And this next one should be installing it. So let's go ahead and pop this in. Hit yes, Y for yes. And honestly, it goes really quickly. That's another reason why I like containers. It doesn't take long to install all this stuff. I also do install Vim and some other stuff I like to use. Vim is just an improved VI editor, so I can actually edit files as I go. So next thing, like I said, we're going to add a user. Simple command, add user. I'm going to do tester. All right. Password is going to be password. Oh, I misspelled it, so let's cancel that out. All right, try again. Yes. Password. Password. There we go. Go all the way through these. Don't really care about that stuff. It's all for show. It's just a tester. Clear the screen. And now, one other thing I want to do is I'll show you. Right now, there is one group that was created by Docker. And we're going to grep that and just to make sure it is there. There we go. That is Docker group. We want to make sure that every user that you expect to run Docker is a part of the Docker group. If you don't do this, when you try to run Docker, it's going to force you to use sudo to run Docker. But then at the same time, Docker, especially Docker Compose, does not like spinning up containers as root. It makes sense, right? We don't want to give that many privileges to a container on the actual base host itself. All right, so let's go ahead and do the command to add the user group. I'm going to do user mod. It's lowercase a, capital G to add a group. The group name, Docker, and then the account name, tester. All right, so now we can clear the screen. Now, there are other ways to do this. I just always do a restart. That just ensures that the tester user is refreshed and has the proper grouping. All right, so now I'm about to sign in as tester using password. All right, I got right in. And we always want to make sure Docker is going to run as we expect. So we do hello world is built into Docker. So hello-world, that runs successfully. We are now good to go. Let's go back over to our tutorial from KeyFactor. So now we've done this part. We're going to go ahead and make a directory. All right, pop over here. All right. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and go into containers. All right, got containers. Yep, it's in there. Scroll on down. Now, next thing we're going to do is do Docker Compose. You know what? This is awesome. Every tutorial I look at has Nano. Now, if you're not familiar with Nano, honestly, you probably should be. But if you're into the world of Unix or Linux, whatever you want to call it, there is a difference. So I apologize if anyone knows the difference. Just most people, I just say Linux or Unix. But for Linux, most distros come with Nano already installed nowadays. But back when I got into Linux, it wasn't there. It was only VI. So I taught myself VI because to use Nano, I had to install it, which took extra steps anyway. So I find it really entertaining that most tutorials I see have Nano nowadays, and this one still has Vim. So I kind of like it. A little more respect in my book. All right, we are now. So cool trick with with VI is if I do Command and then by hitting the escape key, hit lowercase g twice, equal signs uppercase G. It does auto formatting, and I think I forgot. Let's undo all that. I forgot to do my insert properly. There we go. GG equals capital A G. Now, this is the problem with auto formatting. It has all these indentions. Now, this is YAML, which means that it is space sensitive. If we don't do spacing right, it will crash. It will say not good. So everything has to be 2 in. So this means the first layer is good here. I believe bridge is supposed to be, yeah, it's supposed to be inset, so that's 2 in. But application is definitely supposed to be out more. So we take that out, put this over here. Now we're rolling. So where does services go? It is on the level of network, so it makes sense. So now we start our services entry, and I would imagine this is going to be under the R, 1, 2, yep. This is going to be under the B, 1, 2, all right. And let's see, images on the same level. This is as well. We know this is N2. And I'm just guessing that the ones with the ticks or dashes are on the same level because they look like that in this setting already. All right. Now we'll put the volume out here. Yep, same level as, bring this in. And this one should be 2 out. So right here, 1, 2, good spacing. Put under the B. I'm gonna say container name, images, all this. Now the big difference, I see host name is in here. And I just thought about it. Host name is pretty important. We'll see in the tutorial that that host name is what we're expected to put in our URL request. And the reason why I mention that is because part of this setup, I'm going to show you how to update the host file so that the call can be made directly to the host name, even though it's not web accessible, which means it's not known by the normal DNS services. So we're going to put on our internal resolver, and I'll show you what that is. The host file exists on everything from, well, at least on Windows and Linux systems. There's a host file. I'm not a big fan of Mac, so I don't know the setup for Mac. I would imagine host files are located in Mac as well, since it is very similar to Unix or Linux. All right, let's see if I did that right. So ports, yeah, okay, looks like everything is on the same level. Bam. Okay, looks good. And all right, I saved the file. Let's clear the screen. Now, to make this host entry, I need to first know the IP address I'm going to, which is going to be 42. So 10.19.19.42 is my internal IP address. That's what I'll be using on my host machine. I'm going to make that entry. So I just popped open the terminal on my host machine using VI. Like I said, it is my favorite. I'm going to type in host. So Etsy, so /etc. Well, should I say Etsy? A lot of people say Etsy. /host with an S on the end of it. And we're going to put in my password. Oh, it says I was editing. I'm going to edit anyway. Cool. Oh, that's the reason why. So I did do a dry run. It had a different IP address. We're going to change this to a 2. It is the node 1, and we're going to save it. Now, one thing I hate is having those recovery files. So if I go to etc. And yeah, right here we have the host swap. I want to get rid of the host swap file. So let's do sudo remove. Let's just make sure I don't get that same pop-up next time I go to this. I've had too many experiences with that. All right, so now we're good with that. Clear the screen on my host machine. All right, so we've created the file as tutorial stated. We should have to just, well, I'll be able to just jump in and do a Docker up. So what this does is it runs the Docker container creation process. Then it also starts the containers, and it does everything in the background. That means you have full control over your terminal, which with normal Docker, if you don't put the right arguments, when you run a container in Docker, you actually get sucked into the container and you lose your terminal. All this other stuff happens. So let's go do up, up. What did I do wrong? Oh, I'm in the wrong terminal. Am I supposed to be? Nope, not that one either. Might just. Oh, here we go. Okay. I don't know which terminal I was in just now. All right, cool. Now I actually do have a big brother to me, a mentor. He hates containers, but look at this. I don't know how you can not like containers. It just streamlines everything for you, and it makes sure it runs the same no matter what your base host is. It runs the same no matter what. But hey, this is preferences, I guess. There are some reasons to have VMs, but if you can run a container in my book. It's much cleaner, much faster. So now we're going to make sure that everything came booted up correctly. We're going to do Docker PS. There we go. Everything is running. Looking good. Up for 23 seconds. I see no reboots. I'm going to try one more time. A lot of times within the first minute, if there's an error in your container configuration in the compose file, then you'll start to see reboots within the first minute or less. All right, so now what it says is if we run this log file, the output will show us what the URL is once it's completed. All right, so let's go ahead and run that. We can run it in the same screen, but I can also just do tmux. It gives me a second screen, do Control B and the % sign, split screen vertically. And in fact, I don't want to do that. Let's do this. I want to do split screen horizontally. I want to make sure I see all the output. So now I'm just going to paste that down here. And hopefully we get an output with the URL we're supposed to visit once it's finished. So I'm going to pause real quick and I'll be right back once it completes. Perfect, man, it came up pretty quickly. Now we have the URL. I can just copy and paste this out since I made the change to my local host file. All right, and one other thing I do want to show you is just to also confirm this way, since I have a split screen, I can run this command and see what I'm listening on. So it does show currently listening on 443 on IPv6 and 4. That's great. That means most likely it is running as expected of this port here. One other thing I do want to show you is if you don't have the proper resources, this thing will max out. I mean, it will be completely red. It'll fill the swap. I made that mistake with the first test run I did, where I just did like bare minimum. It was just red and it would not start up properly. All right, so now that I have that, let's go ahead and go to the URL as presented. There we go. I love it. This is a good sign. That means the install worked. Awesome. Yes. Now we now have it installed. There are a few steps we'll go through in just a moment here, just to make sure that we're ready to run this in any environment, right? Even a production ready environment. You don't have to have the enterprise version to use this. Community edition works just fine in enterprise. And what we'll do is we'll follow it. First of all, it says here, public access with super administrator role exists. Anyone can access this basically as super admin. Public access should be removed. We can click remove, but before we do that, let's follow the tutorial. Go back over here. Don't track me. All right, cool. It says copy URL. All right, whatever, accept it. We already did that part. Now we're going to issue a super admin certificate. To issue the certificate in the EJB, click on RA Web. So let's go over to RA Web. I think it's across here. Here we go. Ooh, that's pretty. It's much better than the command line interface, right? Request new certificate, status. Let's see what else we have to do. I think it's somewhere up here at the top. So let's go over to our tutorial. It says request new certificate, make new request. So request new certificate, make a new request. Select a type. Pretty sure it's going to be, ooh, is it end user? Let's go tutorial. And it says, yep, end user. Key pair generation by the CA key algorithm 2448, which makes sense because we're doing an end user, which is a client certificate. So we're going to do by CA and algorithm says RSA 2048 is all we need. And then the common name, let's see what it says, put it here. We can specify a super admin, and I'm pretty sure you can put whatever you want, but I'm going to follow the tutorial since they put it together this way. Don't get creative. One thing I've learned after all this time of doing my home lab, don't get creative when it matters, okay? If you got time to rebuild and do everything, do what you want. But until that, no. Do what it says. Other data, clear key recoverable. So under other data, let's see where I can find other data. Here we go. All right. Clear the recovery key for that, so we can't recover the key. It says for provide user credentials, specify username as super admin and password as fo123 to save the database under the username super admin. That's a very good point. I believe when we first originally put in this Docker Compose, yep, there is a password here. That's for the MySQL root password. I think the only password was in there. So that means, honestly, you may want to change it. Totally up to you. I would recommend changing it if it's going to be production. Right now, I'm just running as test. My actual production one, I believe I did change it. So it's up to you if you want to do that or not. All right. So GUI, username. I think Superman admin is still here. I'm going to do lowercase and it specifies. Not getting creative. Enrollment code. This is the password field. I don't know why it's called something different. So provide user credentials, password, foo123. Be nice if they update this part. Foo123. Foo123. Make sure I typed it correctly. There we go. Oh, I don't know why I keep clicking on that one. And I believe that's it. It says click to download the PKCS#12. From my experience, that is the certificate that contains both the, well, sorry, that's the download that contains both the certificate and the key in the same file. And you use that when you install onto your browser. Excuse me. Yeah, so we're going to do that. Save it. So I'm going to save that here. I have that once, so I'm going to name it something different. So 42, because that's the last four of these, or the last two of the IP address under downloads. All right, bet. Got that done. Now we're going to import the certificate. So we're going to go to settings, and we're going to preferences, security, your certificate. So we're going to do not server, well, not authority. I think authority is normally what you see. So we're going to type in certificate just to do a quick find, view certificates, and your certificate. So usually it's like authorities. So if you're doing your root CA validation certificate, you would put it under authorities, but this is a client certificate. So we're going to import it here under your certificate. So I'm going to do the 42. Password is foo123. We did create that already. And voila, we are in there. Hit OK. And I believe that is it. So to create the administrative account, lock down access to EJBCA to only the super admin administrator. Perform the following steps. Definitely want to do this part. So to add, and I believe we're supposed to restart. Let me make sure. Okay, I don't think we have to restart. Good. All right, so let's go ahead and go back over. We've done that part. Refresh my screen. Let's go back over to the administrator page. So click on roles and access rules. Roles and access rules right here. And next we are going to do, all right, so it says next to public access role, click delete. That's simple enough. So public access role, delete. And delete the key. And now what's next? We do next to super administrator role, click members. That makes sense. So members of this. Okay, now this is starting to make sense. We're going to make an entry here for a new member in here. And then it says match the common names. That's one we made up as super admin. And CA, management CA, the value is going to be super admin. That's what we're going to do. So basically what it's saying is it's going to check the certificate of the client, and it's going to see, hey, does this client certificate match the name that we created for that certificate? and that we made for this role. If it does, then we're in. If it doesn't match that, then we're not in. Now, you can't just create any certificate from any certificate authority. It's still going to validate the signing certificate authority, or the root certificate authority that's signed for, or intermediary. In this case, it's a root certificate authority that's created, and it signs the certificate we have now. So let's go ahead and follow these steps. Match value, management, CN, common name, management CA, match value of super admin. And just make sure I have that right. Yep. Hit add. Bam. Now we're in here. Okay. All right. So now, once we add the role, access as administrator for the project, we're going to do restart. So now we are going to restart. Pop this over to the screen. We're up here at the top. We're going to do Docker restart. I need to remember to take out the $sign. Unknown shorthand. Okay. Let's do D. No. Let's just do, that command is not up to date then. So let's clear the screen and just do restart. All right, we're already looking at the logs here. So it said run the logs, but since I have a split screen, don't need to do that. It will automatically populate at the bottom as it runs through. And we should have no issues jumping back in. So let me pop back over to the tutorial. All right, so now it says to lock down access to only do the following. Wow, I thought I just did that. Oh, okay, we created the account. Okay, that's what it was. Okay, so now we're going to actually restrict the access. Now we've created it. So in the menu, we go over here. If the list of available roles is public access, click delete. Next to super admin, we'll click members. All right, so delete that as well. Optional stop and remove containers. I think that's it. That's the last part. So now we can just remove these options once we get the restart. Pop up other screen. I think we're good now. A little longer. Doing some health checks. Health check report. Okay, let me just try to refresh, see if it works. Bam. Okay, remember this decision. It did find it, the certificate. We're going to send it over. I think that worked. In fact, let's go to home. All right. And we can go to system configuration. No. Functions. Okay. I think we're good there. Look at the members. Public access, not used. We can delete that one. I believe that's what it said. Public access authentication. Click delete. Bam. Done. All right, username. Then we leave that. I don't want to touch that one. Okay. I think we have completed all the tasks in here. Remote authentication services. Okay. Bam. Okay, so now we go home. Let's refresh. Oh, the little pop-up left. Oh, it's gone now, right? All right, so that's it. We did it. Okay, we created our very first instance of EJBCA. This is the GUI alternative to OpenSSL. Once again, going over the pros and cons of it. The biggest, well, obviously the pro of doing EJBCA is you have the GUI interface. Most people are comfortable with this. You will be able to do all the same functionality. Plus, you have guidance along the way because you're able to read and touch and move things around and click through it. The only con I can think of is the amount of resources it takes. Also, you're dependent upon the vendor to ensure it stays free and open source to you. Also updates, make sure you stay up to date with things, because this requires a lot more components, being that there's a web interface to it. So that means vulnerabilities can come through the fact of the additional components that you have. And don't get me wrong, OpenSSL is not perfect by a stretch. So it really does make a difference. But with every component you add in there, you have more vulnerabilities. So those are probably the only cons I could think of. But when it comes to building this out for a client, or building out and making sure your processes are repeatable, I would go with EJBCA, because they'll be more comfortable with that, or your future assistants who help you through things will be more comfortable helping you with this versus OpenSSL. But if it's just you in a home lab, conserving your resources, I would go OpenSSL. That's my option there. All right, so that's it. Hold on. All right, y'all. So I appreciate you tuning in for this video, and thank you for following along. Please leave a comment. Please talk to me about what's going on, what problems you have. If anyone that's been around or has talked to me before, I do reach out. I take my comments very seriously, and I do my best to make sure I help everyone I come across. I really do this because I enjoy doing it. So please, if you can, subscribe to the channel, throw a like on there, and most of all, give me a comment, give me some feedback, and I'm looking forward to the next video. Please continue your journey, and I'm hoping this helps you get a little further in your career. All right, on the next video, we'll be installing HeadScale, or Overlay VPN. All right, until next time, y'all. Take care. Bye.